Hello and welcome. My name is Pepe. Welcome to Queer Prism. We are meeting today under the TAP project. I'm sure you've heard TAP, and you're wondering what TAP is. TAP is Trans Advancement Project, and it's a project that brings visibility, knowledge, and educates the public on transgender issues in Uganda. And today we are particularly meeting because March 31st is the Transgender Day of Visibility. We believe that visibility is important, and under TAP we look to accelerate acceptance together, not just being in silos, but doing it together, you the public and us. We do this through advancing dialogues. We do research and communication. Those are really like the key things, and we root this in Ugandan history. We root it in African history around transgenderness, and that's really basically what we do. And this is a national project that is looking to accelerate acceptance together. So today, as we meet for the Transgender Day of Visibility, I have guests with me, and thank you again for Queer Prism to host us. I have 4 guests that are going to be speaking to us. They are going to introduce themselves and what their pronouns are. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I will start on my left. Please introduce yourself and what your pronouns are, and feel free to tell us what you like to do for fun or what really amuses you, and we'll kick it off on that very fun, and we're hoping to have a really fun discussion today. And just because the people who are with me today are quite gorgeous, and you will see them and you will listen to them, that whatever they will be saying will be as gorgeous and educative and informative as they are. So you're most welcome today. Over to my left.
Hello, my name is Dr. Nahiranda Malik. I like I like style. I'm a doctor for now. I guess I want to further it, but when I'm just having fun, I like to fashion styling, because I feel like clothes are a big way about how trans people express their gender identity. Yeah, and I like shoemaking.
Interesting.
Hello, I'm Gafidin Ray. I'm Dr. Gafidin Ray, and I'm a transgender woman, a trans rights activist, and a community organizer. What I love to do for fun is actually do karaoke. Karaoke for one, because I really can't sing for people. So yes, I really love singing. Yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm Muksa Clara. I'm a transgender woman, pronouns she, her, hers. What I love doing, what I'm most proud of doing in my free time, I love cooking. It's something that I'm so passionate about, and I did food science and nutrition while at campus, so I love cooking so much. The way it calms me down, let's say when I'm mentally perturbed or I'm being stressed with something, it really calms me down, so I love cooking, and I'm happy to be part of the show.
What's the favorite dish that we should look forward to?
I love cooking rice and veg rice and then meat.
Oh.
Through the oven, yes.
Hungry.
Already. Hi everyone, I'm called Sean. I'm a transgender man, I'm an activist. What do I like to do for fun? In my free time and my fun time, I like to farm. I like to nurture the earth. So yeah, I spend a lot of time tending to...
You do, yeah.
Yeah, to farming
things.
Yes, getting my hands dirty. Yeah.
Pronouns?
He, him, his.
All right.
I didn't mention mine.
Go
They,
ahead.
they, he.
They, he.
Yeah.
And mine as she has.
Okay, great. And you're welcome to the show today. And as I'd mentioned earlier, that we are here for the Transgender Day of Visibility. what does the Transgender Day of Visibility mean to you? That's one. And then what is visibility? Or maybe we should start with what is visibility to you? Yeah, I'll start with you.
To me, how I understand visibility, I would say first of all, I would relate it to the journey, the one we're building. I say the transgender movement, from the day one how we started. I believe way back we had activism was still so down, and there was so much lack of information about the transgender community, or it's about the queer community. So to me, visibility to me is something that, okay, we are there, that now we are being recognized. The transgender community, the transgender persons, we do exist. The transgender community is there, and and you're trying to strive to see how we could come up and cope up with the general community at all. So to me, that's how I take visibility.
Well, just to add on what she said, visibility for me, I'm tending to have a definition that actually it's how I want to be seen as an individual, not for who I am, but how I want to be perceived, to be seen. And for the movement, it's to be able to be actually acknowledged as a people, and yeah, it's all about being seen and heard as individuals, as human, and the way we want to be seen and heard, not in the way they want to see us. I hope it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, for me, visibility is to see myself first, to stand in my transness and be content to just exist first to myself and within myself, because before the world perceived me, I perceived myself. And also visibility to me now outside myself is to exist as human first. There's a guy on TikTok, he's trans, but he doesn't front it, he's just existing, and I just want to be perceived. I want to show up to work as a doctor, not as a trans doctor. That's visibility. I just want to show up. I'm just me. I'm just here. Yeah.
For who you want to be seen.
Yeah. I just want to be a person first before I'm a trans person. I just want to say I'm Dr. Nahiranda and this is me.
I think to build on just what Doctor is saying, for me, visibility is even our presence right now, right here in this space. For me, it's about being recognized, that one, we exist from an individual perspective, recognizing myself, but then recognizing that as a community, as a collective, we exist. And even within our collective, just even the representation in this space, we are that diverse. So for me, visibility is that we are here, we are different, and we are many. So for me, visibility is how do I get recognized and respected, and and allow myself, or allow me to show up in the best way that I know how, for myself and also for my community.
You mentioned something about you mentioned something about how we are seen as a movement. People, when we talk about transgender visibility, they expect us to be a certain way. When you say I'm a trans man, they expect you to be in a certain form and to fit a certain body, But visibility for us should actually transcend that. It should be more than actually being seen for who they want to see you as. It's as Dr. Nahendra said, it's if I'm a doctor, see me for that. Don't bring my transness and my journey to be who I am authentically to the front, to my my forehead. I think it's important.
I really like your answers. We're in Uganda, a country like Uganda. You've spoken about how you want to be seen, how you see yourself. And Uganda is a diverse country. It has laws, it has cultures and norms and all that. And over the years, from our history, trans people, by then they were not identifying as trans, they were just existing and surviving and just being. But down the road, I'm saying part of the history as the movement began with trans people. And I think even globally, when you look at the story of Stonewall Inn, the people who are there were cross-dressers, there were people who were identifying as she, there were trans men as well, there were sex workers as well. What has now given birth and recognition to what we call pride, right? But in Uganda, trans people are perceived a certain way. Do we have any histories? Do we have any words that identify transgender people? Or are we borrowing something from the West, as our politicians like to say, and legislators, that, you know, being trans or being outside of the norm, you know? So speak to us about Uganda and transness.
You mentioned about history, and I go back to when I was.
Are there any words?
Yeah, words may, terminology, of course, it may not be there. I may not come up with a specific term for our history. But as a toddler, you talked about how trans people, the movement was birthed from the Stonewall Inn, the Martha P. Johnson, and how they used to embrace themselves. As a toddler, I remember I used to put on my t-shirt, the neck t-shirt. I could wear it on my waist as a skirt. I didn't know anything about them. I didn't know anything about sexuality, gender, but that's how every time I went to bathe, and after bathing, because that's the only time I could do it, because I'm from bathing and I didn't want to wet my pants, I could just do my t-shirt like that, like a skirt, and I would feel so free. I think that was one of my best moments as a child. And I think this was me trying to, you know, express that inner suffocated child, that little girl that was in, you know, that body as a boy. So yes, we do have history, even though it's not documented. Our history exists, and that history lies in individual journeys and how we've experiences. I just wish we could document them more as we're doing right now. Yeah, for the future generations to know where we've come from. But for me, that memory, I think that's when actually I started embracing myself. You know, and that's history for me.
I think for me, historically, I don't think there is anything that we can tangibly touch to and like hold on to and say this is, you know, this is our history. Again, like what Gafiden is saying, our histories are mostly our individual personal journeys. But connecting it back to visibility, for me, I think even the availability of language right now is a form of visibility in itself. That, you know, before the 2000s, many of us were maybe lesbians who didn't know what the fuck we're doing, or you know, or trans, or effeminate gay men who didn't know what they're doing. But with the evolution, with our own, you know, our own existence, because I also think our existence itself is a resistance, and it's in itself that is also visibility. So for me, it's us creating the language and also borrowing the language from, you know, from other parts of the world. But going back to the histories, there was no specific language, like you say, but there's something specific to me that I was called as a child all the way when I was growing up. There were two words. There was chakula sajja. And that was some and because of that, up to today, I've not had to explain my transition to anyone, because there's nothing that has changed. The second one was Owempari, like the girl who puts on trousers or shorts. Like for me, my whole childhood, it is a fight I had with my parents, with my siblings. You have to put on a dress. And then even in the village where I was raised and grew up, people knew me like that. And that one is just like, he's just like, that one is just like that. So for me, it's, while there was no language, you know, to rely on as history, I think our communities just used descriptors, like things to just aid, because they also didn't understand what the fuck was going on. Forgive me. But those descriptors helped them place us in the society comfortably. You know, you'd be called chakula sergeant. You know, people would easily relate with that, because if someone sees you, maybe there's someone else who has had someone they also relate with, or they have seen that looks like you. So it becomes easier to to identify that you're that kind of different in your community.
Yeah. I think as even if there was not much documentation in the past, there is some sort of of documentation that we have, because people are writing articles about how boys used to go in the forest during those transition times, and do things in the forest in different African cultures. Also, there are stories about there are women who are allowed to marry other women, or men who are allowed to have husbands or something like that. So there's some documentation. I think I'm very proud of that. Also, I think we could think of more words in our local languages that could describe people like us, because I refuse to believe people like us didn't exist 200 years ago. They were there.
Should we say
words like chakula, saja, but there are other words, I'm sure. Yeah.
I think I've just raised with this is one of the I call it the disadvantages of education is we tend to forget our cultures, and we tend to forget these things that are indigenous to us. Those words are there, chakula, but they call us
There
chakula.
are others,
All those sorts of
Yeah,
words.
yeah.
And recently I was reading an article, I think someone shared it on Twitter, and it was saying, it was detailing different words that are in relation to homosexuality that exist in local languages in Africa.
Yeah.
And I was so shocked to find a word in Lugishu. Actually, it is the only word that was there from the Bantu, Bagishu. I'm a Mugishu myself. And I was really shocked, and I was like, wow, you see this exists, and we have maybe to just
Say
go
the
there.
word.
And I can't even recall because I even don't know my mother language. But yeah, it was there. And I was really surprised. I was like, wow. So we just need to dig more and maybe find out our roots.
I think we also have to invest specifically in being involved in writing, in documenting, because we're in these communities, and maybe would be the best place people to do this research, especially around, what terminologies were there to describe us before the Europeans
And even
invaded us.
just make our own language.
Yes,
for
because
us.
the word kuchu, the word kuchu is just
Actually, we also even have a language that we use with a transgender person.
Yeah,
the
what?
trans
Yeah,
women
what?
have
It has
their-
also helped us with the visibility, the words that we use, mukuza, mukula, stuff like that. So, when somebody has that kind of information, you'll be like, okay, what's that language? So that's also helping with the visibility.
Chula.
So creating language to describe us is one of the ways of visibility. But also I hear from you that you called it a disadvantage of education. It feels more like a disadvantage of English as the colonial language, because yes, we are using it now because of the erasure of our own, because we don't have one word for a specific thing. If you're defining that word, you don't say it in just one word. We are very descriptive as from our local languages, we describe.
as a people,
We don't just mention a word. And speaking of history, for me, I come from West Nile. I'm a Madi, and I remember it was one of my great grand uncles who he was blind, and he used to play the thumb piano. And I think way back, I wrote a blog about him. I wrote, oh God, okay. Yeah, I used to have a WordPress page where I wrote about actually that great uncle of mine. And I remember as a small child, probably 3, 4, 5 to 6 there, because I used to like the sound of the thumb piano. And I remember him telling me, "You're a special child," And when he was saying you're a special child, he was saying, "You're a special child, my son." I was young, and my expression was that he did not expect, but I felt his protection when I was so early, so young. And for me, that gave me the confidence to live in my skin as myself. Yeah. But also our Stonewall, by the way, our Stonewall was actually Dizzy Drop house in Ntinda. So people should not think that we are getting this from Stonewall. We had our own Stonewall, which was Dizzy Drop house in Ntinda.
Ram is a later.
Ram is a later day.
It's a later
Dizzy Drop is like
in
late
Younger generation,
90s
the Gen
and then
Z.
early 2000s.
But there was also Arrivals.
Arrivals is also just
That
is
new.
it's so new. In fact, there was Dizzy Drop House and then there was Tikozy Bar. T then COZY.
in Makerere.
Yeah, so Tikozy was more for like gay men, and then Dizzy Drop was more for everyone, but mainly people today that we call transgender men or non-binary masculine presenting persons.
Wow.
Yeah, I just kind of went back there for I just went back there for a second. You know, there's been a lot of talk around violence towards transgender people. What are some of those challenges that we as a community experience in this country, but also just speaking broadly around rather about transgender people? Why is it that transgenderness is synonymous with violence?
Oh God. That terminology.
Trigger warning. But also, like, I just need people to understand that with so much violence that exists around transgender people, why do you choose to be visible?
I think I will start. I am at the center of documenting most of these violations that happen to, to the wider community and also specifically trans people. And speaking from my own personal experiences and the wider community experiences, the trans community experiences, I think there are several factors that put us in a situation that we are just attracting violence. And that comes from just the idea that this whole homosexuality conversation, because the society itself has little information about gender diversity. So those of us that are seen as, most of us are seen as cross-dressers, yeah? So we are seen as men, as girls, as women who want to be men, and trans women are seen as, women who want to be, and that alone, there's the fear-mongering that has been, spread by the anti-gender movement, but also that lack of information comes along with its own fears, and people thinking that maybe we are some sort of things that turn into I don't know what. But it's also mostly rooted in the lack of like social support systems, like that structure system of, when you're growing up, you're raised, you're in a family, you have that support system of a family, you go to school, you finish school, there's that societal, structure of school, then. But as a trans person who, most of us figure out this way later in life, above our 20s, that means that most times you're actually just going back to your younger ages. You're now starting like from year one of your, and this is you as an adult. So it comes with the lack of social system of social structures that give that social cushion for us to handle and deal with issues. You get evicted. Where do you go to? As a trans person, cis hetero, maybe people would, resort going to villages, going to families. But as a trans person, that is a security threat. And this was mostly heightened even during COVID. When we're in lockdown and people were being told, go home, what does home look like for a trans person who maybe has not been with their family for the last 15 years? Or some of us don't know where our families don't know if we are still alive or not. And they even don't really care, yeah? So it comes down to, whereas the mainstream gender system has these structures that support them to thrive as human beings, everything in that structure is against us as trans people. You have to, the structure is you have to study to get a job and to work and have a life that is, that has a family and all those things. So what does it mean for you to leave home when you maybe have your parents stopped paying school fees, maybe you've just doing senior second school, maybe in senior 3, you have to drop out of school, come start navigating already the economy as hard as it is. Now, without anything, people grow up with, you have an inheritance, or you have, a relative who would say, come, I give you a job in my business, or you have access to land that you can use to get capital to start your own things. But these are not our realities as trans people, and unfortunately we have to struggle, I think, even 10 times harder to just show up as ourselves. And going back to what people were saying, amidst all this, where do we get the balls and the guts to visible as? And it goes back to what I said. I think our visibility, our visibility is the resistance, and that alone is what has brought us this far. That now we are visibly open, having these conversations. We, without you thinking twice about, what am I, who's going to see me, what, I think we've reached a point where we've had enough. And it is we are either being seen, you're either seeing us, or you're fucking off, or getting out of our way. And I think for me now, that is what I'm celebrating as a trans person, to be alive in this time, to see young, energetic trans individuals living their life regardless.
Wow.
It is a worry for me on the other end, as someone who deals in responses, but for me, that alone, I'm like, if I couldn't do this and these kids can do this, what can I do to protect these kids to safely continue doing what they are doing? And for me, that's what gives me the drive to continue being visible, to show that while now counting myself as a trans elder, how do we also mentor and have and create that social support system that I'm talking about for the younger generation? How does someone feel so frustrated with life and they be like, I want to change something about my life, but be able to be like, I can reach out to someone and talk to them and get advice and get even just community. For me, I think,
Why is transness synonymous with violence? Sean, you had given us an answer. I'll come to you, Clara.
Yeah, so with me, I first of all want to add on from what my colleague he said. Remember, you mentioned about where we have a transgender persons who take more than 5 years or 15 years without seeing their family members. So it took me back. I'm a victim of family outing. I remember I'd gone to conduct an outreach. Okay, before I didn't talk about this, but then I'm an activist. I'm a human rights defender, though I'm more based in Jinja, Igangam Valley. So it's where I started my activist. Actually, I'm one of the first people that started activism that side. So remember, I was conducting an activity there. So this happened from one of the members I'd invited. And also it kind of helped to open my eyes that we also still have members who are part of the community, or let's say the LGBT community, but they still have this phobia against us, the transgender persons. So this person outed me to my family. I spent like 1 week at the police cells. Every day.
Family took you to police?
Yes. Actually, they came with a police car. They took me like an MP actually to the police station for a full week. Every morning with a parade, they bring you out. People, get to to look at you. They see the breast you're having, and then they look at your whole body. People could talk. And then after the 1 week, I was taken home for like 3 months. I was more like grounded. My hormones were confiscated. My phones, all the contacts, all the connections I had with people. So it really triggered me so much until the day I was like, you know what? Enough is enough. If I told this is how it's supposed to be, then I need to stand up for myself, because this is me and this is who I am. And if I told I don't stand up for who I am, then nobody will do that. So that brings me back to the question why visibility needs to be there, because at the end of the day, it's us who understand ourselves more better than the community. So if at all we don't come up to stand up for ourselves, then nobody will. So with me, I believe visibility needs to be there amidst all challenges, because at the end of the day, we need to be there. We are human beings above all, and we're all the same.
Wow. This is getting
Actually,
very emotional.
to me, it's no longer more like a sad story. I feel
I know.
it's now more like a source of my strength. When I stand up among these people and I'm telling out my story, what I've been through, and maybe whatever they're going to pick from my story, it makes me feel good. So I believe we still need to do that visibility.
So, I was also outed, but I was outed as a homosexual. And I was in high school. I was in my form 6, actually. I was in my form 6. But I don't want to get there. It's a very, 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 very heavy story. But before I address why we decide to be visible amidst the adversities and the violence, I really want to come to point out why do we face violence more than other people part of the LGBTQ community, other sexual orientation and gender identity minorities. It is because our existence transcends what they define as normal. You know, homosexuality is an abomination in our cultures and in the African context. But they do not punish homosexuals as much as they punish trans people. It's because they see us as evil that has gone beyond evil, you know. They see us as a devil, you know, the devil himself or herself. And that is where violence against trans people is birthed. It's our being, our existence, whatever we do is seen as we are doing the impossible, and the impossible that is bad, and that's why we're always punished for it and gravely for it. Seeing trans people are killed more than they kill gay men. Trans people are violated more than they violate gay men.
Actually, I still have scars of anger
even trans men, because I've seen trans men who have correctional rape is not something trans women experience, and it's something that is so brutal. And why do they do that? Because they want to correct someone for putting on, you know, being I mean, and it
says they're the
correctors, and you wonder like, why are you punishing someone by, you know, thinking maybe they're making them more feminine by raping them, which is very sad. But we choose to be visible because for me it's a saying by
gender or existence is not defined by sex.
And of course, and I'm a medical doctor, and I've had very furious conversations with my professors back in medical school where we had conversations about gender. And for them, the definition about gender is how society has to perceive me, not as I perceive myself. And it's something that we've had very heated conversations with colleagues and all that. You know, gender is mine. It's mine. It's mine and mine alone. And why do I choose to be visible amidst all that? It's because there is this saying, and my mother used to say it a lot. It's if you're between the forest and the bush in the night, either way it's hardship, either way it's confusion, either way it's, you know, embracing that. And as trans people, whether you've decided to just be there and die with your gender dysphoria and die with those thoughts and die with the uncertainty of life, it's as much as tormenting as to come out as a trans person and then get beaten.
Sure.
So our existence and our visibility comes from a place of we have nothing to do but just be. Yeah. So violence and transness being synonymous, it stems from being able to, we just transcend normalcy. We define what's normal to us, and that's why we face hardships either way. Either if you decide to be, you know, in your closet and decide to be there without trying to, you know, to express who you are authentically, that torture, it's a lot, and it's very individualistic. My experiences are not the same as, you know, other trans persons' experiences, and that's that. And whether you come out to embrace who you are, you're going to find the torture there, but then the torture is going to be, you know, from other people, from other parties.
Violence and towards trans people perpetrated by the church, at least mine. I hate the church, and part of the reasons it is important for me to be visible despite this violence is because I'm like, kids, I'm gonna be trans, because the way you made me feel as a church as I was growing up, like I'm gonna be trans now, just to stick it in your face, just to show you, and you know, and to make you angry, because you also made me feel bad when I was growing up. You made me doubt myself. You made me feel suicidal because of the things you were telling me. So for me, it's an act of rebellion towards the church that has perpetrated this violence towards trans people. And two, I choose to be visible despite this violence because there's a kid out there who wants to see me and know that they can make it too. Because I remember being that kid and I wanted to see someone make it. That's it. Yeah.
Awesome. And that's super powerful. My next question is around, you mentioned gender dysphoria, you mentioned being outed as a homosexual and you're trans. As you were speaking, I was just thinking about the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity, because you said you are outed to your family as a homosexual. Homosexuality is about sexuality,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So your transgenderness is about gender. It's a gender identity, it's a whatever. But I want the public to understand more these differences, because we're from speaking about violence, and you find that the violence that actually comes to us trans people is actually rooted or coming from homophobia, because their understanding of transness, and you mentioned it earlier before we took the break, that most people think that trans people are cross-dressers. They are men, pretending to be women or dressing as women, and women dressing as men. And you made that distinction already, that is not what it is. But that is what is in society's mind. Can you educate the society on these differences for them to understand your visibility better, or the community's visibility better? And I want to start with you, Clara, and then we'll crisscross.
Okay, so to me, gender identity it's more like a feeling, my inner feeling, how I feel as a person, and how I present myself, or how I love to be taken as a person. So to me, I would say that is gender identity. And then to talking about sexuality, for instance, I mentioned before we went to for a break, I would say I'm a transgender lesbian. Let's say I'm dating my colleague. He's a trans man. He's a man. So I believe transgender persons can also be a heterosexual couple, because if at all I'm a woman and then he's a man, and then being heterosexual is being a man and a woman, I believe that can also still work out. So with me, gender identity is different from sexual orientation, and I would say sexual orientation is also more like fluid with how people more like attain how their sexual feelings. I would say it's fluid, yes.
Anyone else wants to contribute?
As she said, for me, gender identity, I really don't want to use a textbook definition, because they're very flawed.
True.
And we are learning this over time.
Yes.
And to me, my gender identity is how I want to be seen. It's how I see myself, and I want you to see me that way. So if I say I'm a transgender woman, and that's what I want you to see me as, not expect me to be something, an idea of, your idea of who I should look like. And no matter how much gender identity and sexual orientation are very different terminologies, but they have a correlation somehow. And that correlation comes through lived experiences of how we embrace ourselves when we are growing up as trans people. Because our journeys are not black and white. They're not steps. They're not clear steps that you're going to do this at this time. And And for me as an individual, personally, I first believed I was a homosexual, and of course we didn't know that. Of course, we didn't know that trans people, as a trans woman, I'm a heterosexual woman. I love having sex with women, but it's confusing to society whenever they see me with a man and they look at my sex assigned at birth. They'll term it as homosexual, because their idea of gender and sex are two things. They one in the same, as you say, exactly. So gender identity that's why in our movement, mostly the movement in the global south, you find out that the violence stems from homophobia, because they failed actually to embrace the fact that gender identity itself, and also how we grow up, how we embrace our transness, is not in a clear path of steps and guide. We don't have a manual. So you find out that you're going to do a lot of things to become very comfortable in who you are. She's a trans woman, and she's in her journey of transitioning. It's not the same journey as mine, and that's a very clear difference. But that does not mean I'm not trans.
And you've thrown the word transitioning.
Yeah.
Some people say that when you're a trans woman, you have to look the part of a woman.
Yes.
And then if you're a trans man, you have to look part of a man. Does that where do people who haven't medically transitioned and probably have socially transitioned, and maybe I'm throwing words out there that you can help the public also understand, where do they fall? People who have not grown beards or grown breasts, does that then make other people, does that make them less trans?
It doesn't. It doesn't make me any less of a woman just because I have a beard and I haven't done, or I have done little transitioning. The journey of transitioning is very myriad and it is very wide. People expect us to, when you tell them I'm trans, they expect you to jump on hormones and start, I don't want to use that word cross-dressing, but I have to. They want you to start dressing a certain way just to look what you're telling them. Yes, to minimize that confusion, but I'm not here to serve, to serve your comfort. I'm here to be myself.
Yes.
And my journey is very, 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 very unique.
Yeah.
I'm deciding to take different steps into embracing my gender identity in a way that's making me feel validated, not to validate society's idea of who I am.
I think on that note, we should teach trans people to define their own normal. We should teach trans people that you don't have to compare yourself to so and so. You have to sit down with yourself every day and tell yourself what is normal for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Actually, that's just a challenge we've been having mainly in Ginger. We have been having our community members. They say if you're trans, you need to be having bobs, you cross-dress. So it's one of the challenges we're still trying to fight in our community, that being a trans, remember, this is gender identity. It's a feeling. It's how I want to be perceived. So it's not a matter that, if you want to be recognized as trans, you have to go take hormones. Personally, I have friends who are transgender persons, but they have beards. And they dress in a masculine way, but then they will tell you, I'm a woman. I'm a transgender woman. And that's why I've had challenge with transgender persons on hormones. But if you want fully a transgender person, you have to go for bottom surgery, and maybe you have to do all that to be fully a transgender woman. And yet to have transgender persons, I'll be like me, and let me use myself as an example. I would say I want to take hormones, but then I just want to be there. When I'm just having my boobs, I dress well, I'm passing, but I don't want to go for the bottom surgery. So it's still a challenge we're still having, that if you want to be fully a transgender person or to be taken as a transgender person, you have to fully go for the transitioning, which is not true.
Exactly. I have an idea of who I am, and I'm working towards that.
Thank you.
On my own pace. You realize, Sean, that that's where hypersexualization of trans people comes from. It's because they want us to look a certain way.
Thank you.
So they use us at their own comfort. And I'm glad that the movement today is defining our own transness. The movement back then they would encourage trans people actually to transition. But the movement today is giving us a chance to people to embrace gender identity and expression individually. And our effort, what we have to do, I think, as trans persons, is to educate ourselves more on what gender identity is. Gender identity is self, and it is individualistic. It does not mean that just because we are all trans, or we are all trans women, our gender expression should be the same. It's very
Africa is a very communal and collective. We have this whole communal living, and we embrace being collective. And you're talking about being trans is gender identity is individualistic. Then how do you exist in the larger world as yourself?
As myself. What I mean with my gender identity being individualistic, it does not come to, again, I'm going to live alone. They should start prospecting. There is a narrative, we're all advocates here. There is a narrative about rights-based frameworks and values-based frameworks. I prefer going for values-based frameworks because they embrace people for being human, not for being transgender or for being gay or for being women. That's why we find issues of you're not trans enough, or you're not woman enough. We've seen women with beards that have those genetical, with beards, and then being sidelined. You're not, So that's why I said we have to educate ourselves first. It does not mean that me being a trans woman that's presenting in a masculine way should set me aside to form my own movement. No. We should embrace the diversity and the beautiful, those differences that we have, and then just come together as a colorful movement and just move together as this peacock,
All right. Yeah. There's also this this narrative that trans people are sex workers.
Like,
But Pepe, before you move to that point, we're overemphasizing about living as our true selves, but we've also left out the part where we need to tell people that if you're not ready to be visible, according to your personal assessment of this larger community that you're living in, that you were saying, please stay put. It's okay to stay put.
There's no rush. Like,
Yes.
exactly.
we treat transitioning as we are rushing to somewhere.
Which they
And
did.
it is a journey that is never ending.
Which they did.
From the moment you realize you're different to the moment I think you die, you're still on this transitioning journey. And whether you do surgery, whether you take hormones, whether
You stay in the
whether
closet.
you don't, whether you do anything about your body or you don't, you're still on a journey of transitioning. And for me, I think that is
trans.
It is
That
trans.
means it's a
Yes.
journey.
I think about
Thank
teaching
you.
people the differences of, sexual orientation, gender identity is really very important, even within our own communities. Most of us are transitioning when we don't know what trans is. Today you find someone telling you they are trans. Tomorrow when they call for MSM meetings, you'll find the same person there. Tomorrow when they are calling for gay men, I don't know what, you will find the same person there. So it's also as trans individuals, how do you first learn how to identify yourself and be comfortable in that identification for you to be able to be identified as so by anyone else around you. And then also that just before the difference between sexual orientation, gender identity, just for teaching purposes, I think we need to understand that while they are both spectrums, they are both journeys. Today you will change, you'll wake up when, like I mentioned, most of us as trans people, you've also mentioned Gaffidian, most of us started as gay or lesbian just because we didn't have the language. We felt different, but because that is the easiest thing that we knew that was normalized or popularized at that time, we thought maybe we are, a lesbian or
There was no
homosexual.
roadmap.
But then you inside yourself you'd feel, but this thing I'm calling myself does not say it is fitting. Do you understand? Even when you're trying to have lesbian sex,
You're like,
Now you have to move forward.
there is something that so for me it's about identifying those nuances of our journey and understanding that those experiences that are what inform our transitioning, our journeys on these spectrums, because you'll find someone today is trans and maybe tomorrow they are not, and that should also be okay.
there needs to be space for that.
There,
Just like how sexual orientation, someone will be gay, which is also okay. Like, and just for the general public, there is sexual orientations that are different. There's homosexual, heterosexual, asexual, pansexual, and these things.
Demisexual.
And these things mean different things. And I think the heterosexual is quite unfortunate because they don't get the opportunity to experience these differences.
By the way, they have started.
And I am going to say this on air, and that is why you see these days we're saying that everybody in Kampala is queer, because people want to try.
Oh, heterosexuals have started.
That's the
doing
thing that
things.
they have started now, because now they want to try these different, these different sexualities that are out there. Because I think our parents' generation was so unfortunate and unlucky that they didn't have the kind of information we have
That we have
today.
now.
Yes.
I have a feeling that many of our parents were LGBTQ, but will forever die in silence because they were never given that opportunity to explore themselves in the way that, and that's why we shock our parents, because you wake up and you say you're trans, your parent wants to go mad because they do not understand your courage. What the fuck are you actually saying? How do you have the courage to say it loud for people to see that now we're even on in front of cameras talking about our lives? Like, so I think also our journeys and our visibility creates manuals for people to differentiate between what is gender identity, what is sexual orientation, and expression, because also that is also a different conversation altogether.
And when you talk about our parents' generation, I was privileged to be in the presence of a great 70-year-old man. So there's this interview I did, John Oliver, So a guy contacts me via Facebook, DMs me, and tells me, my father needs you for his 70th birthday. I'm like, you don't know me, I don't know you. And there was just a bit of that arrogance of, in the text. I was just like, you know what, to hell. In fact, I remember deleting it and blocking the person. Somehow the person found me. It took the person about maybe a month to find me, and then they were now polite and respectful. And they told me that their dad, when they sat and they asked their dad what they wanted, what he wanted for his 70th birthday, he said, find me that guy. He's on YouTube. I've seen him on YouTube. I know you can access him. Find him. I want to meet him. That's the present I have for my birthday. So these guys looked and then they found me. The long and short of the story is that he came out to me. He had older sons, over 50. I think the oldest was about 50 something, because there was a talk in the village about his sexuality. So he married his best friend, a woman. And he's gay. So they had children, but he said he cannot die without his truth at least being known by someone. And he chose me because he thought I was very brave. And so when I met him, I asked him, does your wife know? He said, yes. We've been married for over 50 years. And she knew. And he told me one thing, she's my best friend.
We need me some best friends.
And this is a person who lived throughout his life. His best man at their wedding was his lover. His wife knew.
And I think we're having such
we're
having such of these
so
scenarios,
yeah.
many of them these days.
So no matter what you do to suppress someone's being and identity, at one point in your life there will be that courage to tell one person, two people. And then at his 70th party that his kids threw for him, he came out to his kids.
The look on their faces.
He thinks I am brave. I think he has the golden platinum balls. At that age, now it's about 7 years. He's still alive. We're in touch. And his kids, one of them picked a Bible, started praying, and was saying that I have recruited the father. I was like, wow.
Recruiters.
I was just like, wow. I usually like to drive myself, but I didn't drive myself. I just asked the driver, let's leave. And after some time, I think about 3-4 months, the man said, I need to give you a cow.
So these guys that came for you didn't know you actually.
They knew because
okay.
they now read
Okay.
about me and whatever, and they were like, why is our dad like this? It was only one, and I guess parents, as much as they try to take us in circles, they always have a favorite child. So the favorite child is the one who was suspicious and said, this man had to be queer. So for him on that day, he was not in shock, while the sisters and other brothers and other relatives were throwing tantrums. This one was put. He was like, hugged the father, and life moved on.
Actually, me, I have a friend of mine. She's a lesbian. So with her, what she did, she just got a friend who's still a gay person. So then they were, we're gonna have a kid. But then with us having a kid, you're still allowed, to have your relationship with the fellow gays, and then you can still have it with my lesbians. What's connecting us that we're having a kid? Just in case, unless the kid is there.
You realize we are talking about coping mechanisms and how people are actually living. Because those are stuff. I also know a couple, no, actually not even one, like a couple of people that are doing this, and it's they do it not because it's not because they actually want to do it, but it's putting some pressure off of the
Society pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the way of
I hook up people
surviving.
like that. I hook
And
up.
then also another challenge you're having.
Yes.
Like another challenge we're having in the community, I don't know, should I say due to our community pressure that now people feel to be on a safer side as a transgender person, you have to go in for the hormones and then you start transitioning.
yes.
We have had an issue where, but okay,
It's
now we
tough.
know hormones are there, visibility of the hormones is there, but then people are still lacking information. Okay, I have organizations that still give that information and they're still doing it. But members out there now, for instance, I have a kid, okay, I'll call her my kid because me from the time I've been in the community, I reached a time and they started calling me Mommy Clara. To an extent, I still have people I show at my place and they call me mother. Just also for security on my side, people will say I'm the mother to those. So I have a kid. With her, she's been coming from Kampala from Ginger to Kampala to come and club, we have Raza, we have La Charosa, those bars. So now, you're meeting people, they know about hormones. So now when you go back, you want to start hormones. But you're going to start hormones, but you lack information about these hormones. So now this girl, she started hormones, but without information of how hormones should be taken, not even testing. And now she's reached a point where she's like, I didn't want to be this.
So on that note, because now we are wrapping up, I'm going to take your closing remarks, but you've talked about transitioning, and I think we will consider having a discussion on that on the next podcast that we host. So I will start with you, Dr. Malik. What are your closing or parting shots about visibility? What do you want people out there to know? There are young people who are struggling. There are older people who are struggling. There are middle-aged people who are struggling. There are people who are out there struggling. How can they be visible? What are the dangers of being visible?
My parting remarks would be, take it easy. You have your whole life, and also don't put your life at risk for any particular moments just for this transition, because it's going to be your whole life. Don't be still dependent on your parents in S2 and you just go full blown. You will drop out, my friend. You will drop out. Assess. Talk to people. Have communities where you can be yourself in moments, but assess. Be safe as you transition.
Thank you, Dr. Gaffidin.
Wow, I'll just build on what he said. I mean, I've mentioned this, I think this is going to be like a thousandth time. Gender identity itself. For young trans persons, you're who you are and you know who you are. Try to live in a sense of self-awareness, not only for yourself but also for the environment around you. And then for the for the public and the LGBTQ community first, in order for you to celebrate the Transgender Day of Visibility, is be ready to see us, because if you're celebrating visibility of trans persons, be ready to see them for who they want to be seen as, not what you want them to be. And for the society, public, our mothers, our sisters out there that are not part of the LGBTQ community, is trans people are very much human. We are not deluded. We know what we're doing, and we love it. Oh my God, we love ourselves. Yeah.
Love yourself the way you are. Whether you're trans, whether you're gay, whether you're lesbian, love yourself the way you are. You know why I'm saying love yourself? Personally, when I started transitioning, I had an issue that I'm on hormones, but then I still didn't accept that, okay, I'm doing it. To an extent, even when I was on border biz going out, I could just have this illusion, maybe somebody's looking at me like, okay, a man or a woman. So at the end of it, I said, just love yourself, accept yourself the way you are, because at the end of the day, it's who you are, and nobody's gonna change that. We've had this spiritual hate speech around people that we're not loved by God, but then I want to tell you that God really loves us so much, because at the end of the day, when the Bible says God knew us before we were born, and now we're in this world, so that means God loved us and knew us before we were born. So love yourself, accept yourself, but above all, always have security measures. We're in this kind of world where by now we're having the AHARs there. I mean, we still want to express ourselves the way we are, but then at the end of the day, have security measures.
Elder.
Really, for me, I want to just say, my parting shots are, being trans or transitioning is a very liberating, very, very liberating journey. And it's also a very frustrating and dangerous journey if you do it in when you don't have the support system that you need. And really, I just want to really share that support is there. We have community, we have, we have access to, you've had their hormones, but before you reach the point of taking hormones, first understand yourself, first appreciate your journey. And then also you're transitioning, remember, you're transitioning from the communities that you've grown up in.
Yes.
You're transitioning with your families, and sometimes what happens that as trans people we transition and want to forget our families. Please have some grace on the people with the people around you. I understand we want to be always,
rebellious.
No, you want to
not
be
really.
gendered the right way, but you also, people also people. This is we are almost a first generation trans people are interacting with. So to have that, extend that grace and allow people to transition with you. Those who are on your side will stay with you throughout the journey, and those who are supposed to fall off will fall off. I'm not saying stick to situations because you must, but as Dr. Malik said, if you're still in school, if you're still dependent, guys, the social structures that are there don't support us as we would rather be and want to be. But if you still have an opportunity and you still going to school, you're still having, a family that can still take care of you, it is a lifelong journey that nobody is going to take away from you. These other things are just part-time. Just be patient. Be patient with yourself, be patient with their journey, be patient with everyone around you. But yeah, it is a fun and very liberating.
Yes.
Community is here. They need to
Yeah,
know
community is here.
Yeah.
Also, be aware that not all community is also good. You might find yourself in community that is not a safe space. So just really watch out for what safe space actually looks like.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And to celebrate Transgender Day of Visibility, be kind, be patient. Address trans people by the pronouns that they tell you. If they haven't told you, ask them what pronouns they prefer, what name they prefer.
Yeah.
Respect is very important. When you're respected, you feel loved. When you're respected, you feel safe. And create safe spaces for transgender people to be who they are in whatever capacity it is. So thank you very much, Dr. Gaffidin. Thank you very much, Dr. Malik. Thank you very much, Sean. And thank you very much, Clara, for, gracing us today with education and information. And I hope that the public out there has really learned a thing or two. And if you have questions or whatever, comment, in the comment section, and we will be able to answer some of your questions. Until next time, celebrate a safe and happy Transgender Day of Visibility.
Visibility.
And thank you, Queer
Ciao.
Prison, for hosting us. Ciao.